Now, just a reminder, you will all have 2 minutes and 30 seconds for each question, and we will start with question number 1 to Claudia. What are the reasons you are running for political office, and what are the issues facing Rocky Hill?
Well, some of the reasons I've already stated in my opening statement, and so I won't belabor it and use into my 2.5 minutes by going back. But again, I ran based on my long-standing commitment to the town of Rocky Hill. I mentioned some of my history. It's not all-inclusive. I ran with a quality team of people that bring both experience and fresh ideas, because it's important to have a balance of both. People that have the institutional history and those that are new and come on board, rather than somebody with no basis at all. I didn't like some of the things that I saw. I've been here for a very long time. We've raised our family here. I'd like to grow old here. Some would say I've already started to grow old, in particular through this election. But in just 2 years, again, we've made progress, but we still have so much more to do. And some of the issues, which 2 years goes by fast, some of the issues that we've addressed and need to continue to address. Number 1 is promoting smart economic development that respects our open space. Trying to continue with that plan that is consistent with our plan of conservation and development, so that hopefully you've seen the change. We've changed our zoning regulations to make them more consistent with that goal. We have acquired open space and land both by way of purchase of land and farmland development rights. Responsible budgeting is very important, protecting our town services while keeping our taxes in check. We have the lowest mill rate of all of our neighboring towns with still the best services. And that's something Rocky Hill should be very proud of. No, I didn't come in with a zero tax increase, but quite frankly, it was a zero tax increase that we had to make some adjustments for the next year and still managed to reduce the proposed budget by a full mill rate. And quite frankly, in the first year of Mr. Bass's term, the increase in taxes was higher than you've seen, and I ask you to fact check. It was a 3.1 mil increase in the first year. So there's some, in fairness, I think you should know that. Our goal, again, is to keep the quality of life, to keep the development appropriate, to make Rocky Hill a better place to stay in, both because of the quality of education and for our seniors, and it's a growing class, to grow older, and including one of our priorities, which is the advancement of the Community Senior Center. Long overdue, and it was under our administration that despite opposition, we made huge gains and now have an architect on board who's developing the design and schematic work, and that's under the direction of one of my team members, John Emanuel.
Claudia, thank you. Lisa, what are the reasons you are running for political office, and what are the issues facing Rocky Hill?
Thank you. I'm running for office for one reason, and that's because I believe I can make a difference. Rocky Hill is my home. It's where I, like many others, volunteer numerous hours of my time to give back to the community. I can tell you one thing is for sure. Rocky Hill is a small town with a big heart and an even bigger sense of community, and we are not divided. And I can tell you that our two-party system isn't broken, it's just mismanaged. Does anyone here really believe that we can continue to elect the same people and get a different result? It's time for new leadership, new ideas, viable long-term planning. We are long overdue for an administration capable of working beyond party affiliation and finding a middle ground. Compromise is not a dirty word, ladies and gentlemen, and I am not afraid to use it. It's time to expect more from our elected officials, and I am committed to raising that bar and setting the benchmark for what it means to be a voice for the people, all the people of Rocky Hill. When we talk about issues, I see opportunities, missed opportunities for our town. I see stalled leadership, as we all do. But more than that, I see a tremendous range of talent in our community that deserves a chance to contribute to our base. This is why Team Rocky Hill was assembled. We are committed to working for today and planning for tomorrow. Take a look at what's happening in Hartford and at the state level. It's a mess, and that's due to poor planning, quick fixes, and poor management. Like every town, we rely upon millions of dollars in our current budget that the governor is determined to cut. But unlike many towns, our elected officials adopt a wait-and-see approach. Let's hope for the best, rather than coming together to create imaginative solutions. Well, we can do better. I will not gamble with your money. I will not gamble with your retirement. And I will not gamble with your children's future. I will not rush to action before we have all the facts, nor will I postpone action when action is needed. In fact, I will take the unprecedented step of developing a comprehensive 5-year plan
Lisa,
to
thank
move us
you.
forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lastly, Henry, what are the reasons you are running for political office, and what are the issues facing Rocky Hill?
I believe I have the best background and skill set to lead Rocky Hill through these difficult financial times. The National Party's job, their only job, is to stay in power across the board, across the states. The people's, the voters' priorities are at the bottom of the list. And that's difficult, because what's right for Oregon isn't necessarily right for Connecticut. What's right for Montana isn't right for New Jersey. So you need a group in town, locally, to say what's right. Whether you're disappointed in the governor or disappointed in the president. One party's going to tell you the cup's half full, the other one half empty. I'm saying their cup is too big. Unite Rocky Hill offers nonpartisan flexibility, the ability to negotiate with both sides. Look what happened to Senator Doyle and his party for trying to do what's best for the people. And that's a shout out to Senator Doyle. Good for you. I decided I would not be accepting campaign contributions. I am not working for donors, only residents. I take my orders from the voters, not the national political parties. Neither party will endorse a member of the opposite party, but they say they'll work across party lines. Unite Rocky Hill is a coalition of Democratic, Republican, and unaffiliated voters. We're already working across party lines and proving we can do it. The state budget and its uncertainty, 112 days with no budget. We need to bridge that gap with sound fiscal policy. Government ethics, the charter violations, which is our constitution and how we run our town. The 5=6 affirmative votes to appoint the town manager, and that whole debacle that cost thousands of dollars in legal fees, and then later, that party changed their mind. The Public Building Commission, which has done a phenomenal job with the high school, yet their duties were stripped from the intermediate school project. The streetlight referendum, projected savings of $40,000 a year. And there was a switch which resulted in less than a $200 savings a month. We can disagree on how to achieve these goals, but we cannot become complacent about the goals themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a doer in a job reserved for talkers. And one final thing on the budget. The Moriarty budget in 13-14 was $66,263,669. My budget the next year was $68,573,000, which gave you all-day K, cruisers, and SROs. My budget went up $2 million. Claudia's went up over 8%, closer to 10% with the increases.
Henry,
Look it up.
thank you.
Inflation was only 2%.
Thank you very much.
Yo, Henry.
Claudia, question number 2. What are the first 3 goals that you plan to accomplish if elected, re-elected? Oh, start with Lisa this time?
Yeah.
All right.
All right, hold on.
That's okay. Lisa, we'll start with you this time. I apologize.
Thank you. Well, first, hiring a full-time designated town manager is my top goal. Second is developing a written comprehensive 5-year plan to evaluate all of the potential projects and all of the improvements that are coming down the road in a systemic fashion. Because what we need to do is we need to provide transparency, not just for taxpayers, but also for the council. And we need to provide transparency for future administrations. And once we have a comprehensive 5-year plan, what that will do is it will help us stabilize our mill rate by reducing the need for us to constantly go out and borrow money for predictable expenses. Rocky Hill is actually often referred to as the town without a 5-year plan. I don't know if you know that, and that's because of our failure to forecast. For years, our elected officials have deferred improvements because of the lack of a guidance of a 5-year plan. And you'll see that. One great example is that it's taken us 15 years to actually start to begin to address the senior center issue. And in fact, we are in the same exact place that we were 2 years ago, wherein we're looking for someone to evaluate the expansion of our town hall. And it's also another reason why we have to demolish assets like Mosier School, is because we're not thinking down the road and preserving and maintaining what we already have. The third goal that I have is to make sure that we're progressing within the parameters of our 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development. This is our town. We define how it looks and where we see ourselves in the future, not developers. But we need to elect officials in place who are willing to implement the projects and implement the vision of our town and of the plan that's been established. Our leaders have allowed developers to build hundreds of apartments prior to having guidelines for safety and occupancy. This is not careful management, and a temporary moratorium isn't going to solve government inaction. They've also allowed farmers in the meadows to struggle with recurring vandalism for years without a forum to make their voices heard, despite our plan's call to protect and preserve farming. The only way that we're going to stop this
Lisa, thank you very much.
is Republican.
Now we'll go to Henry.
My three priorities are: first, hire a town manager and attorney to move the town forward. But I'm going to talk about that a little later in this evening. Managing the budget for the state shortfall on taxes is the second one, but I'll also speak about that in a little bit. The third thing that's a top priority is school overcrowding. And I believe education deserves its own question, so I'm going to focus on education for my allotted time. I believe all children should receive a high-quality education. Education is the nation's backbone. The state cannot keep rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If elected, I will write the governor my first day and let him know this town supports our education system, and I will replace this administration's wishbone with a backbone. Moratorium on multifamily dwellings needs to happen immediately. The moratorium eliminates high-density apartments on a small footprint of land. This will alleviate the overcrowding in schools. I placed a moratorium on multifamily dwellings a few years ago, which is for a set period of time and must be renewed, and I will make a motion to renew it immediately. Not only to protect our schools, but to have some type of fairness and recognition to the overcrowding. Enforceable housing code ordinance is something that we need to do immediately. Even the town attorney agreed the present one is not possible to enforce. I believe strong schools will build a strong community, and with a strong community, everyone benefits. Local business, seniors, students, and hardworking residents. I'm going to fund the unfunded police officer requested by the chief. 1 in 10 boys, 2 out of 10 girls by the age of 12 have been abused. Predators are now going to school sporting events and learning kids' names from their team shirts, learning the names of their teams, and getting into their cell phones and hacking the phone cameras, videos, and finding the location of the phone. I believe funding a police officer position for some $60,000 is far more important than risking children's safety. I'm going to manage the intermediate school construction at the council level, along with our very qualified Public Building Commission, who has done an outstanding job on the high school project. By joining their expertise with appropriate council participation, the town can avoid expensive lawsuits by contractors. While I was mayor, I routinely visited the schools. If in some way my visiting schools, eating lunch with the kids, and encouraging them to excel in reading by dressing like a minion or kissing a llama shows my dedication, I say bring out the llama.
Henry, thank you.
Go, Henry.
So I'm now going back to you. What are the first 3 goals that you plan to accomplish?
Mark, can I list 10? Good, there's not enough time. I, too, am going to follow the same suit as Mr. Basil. I have a lot to say about the budget, and I have a lot to say about the town manager, but we have questions specific to those, and given the limited amount of time, I'll move on to others. But part of what you've heard this evening and what we've seen in literature that's been disseminated about town shows the importance of having a mixed slate of experience and fresh ideas, because the town does have a CIP. Not only that, each year when we go through the budget, we actually do go over a 5-year plan, but more significantly, in my first year of my administration, we hired a professional to conduct a full facilities study of all of the town buildings and equipment, and to simulate that information, synthesize it into a report that there's one for each building, it's about that high, and that's being synthesized by our staff so that we can actually look out 20 years to prioritize projects within town. It's because of that we've been able to plan over time and try to make up for some of the gaps, including when one of the funds was invaded to take money out of a multi-year plan for our swimming pool. We put that back in. Again, the budget we'll talk about later, but it should be a point of pride that Rocky Hill has held its AA+ bond rating under its recent review, despite what you've seen in the newspaper about the multitude of other towns, 26 on the warning list. We continue to focus on, again, it's all a quality of life and a representation of all of the town of Rocky Hill. It's not picking one segment over another. It's important to grow our grand list, but we can't ignore, as had been ignored, the plan of conservation and development. And again, it was under my administration with my team that we just recently enacted a housing code to address the issues of overcrowding. We just recently amended the zoning ordinances so that the regulations now are more appropriately fitted for mixed use and to ensure that the plans that come through are consistent with our plan of conservation and development. We have a vibrant economic community in Rocky Hill, but we want it vibrant and balanced, and that's why we continue to explore options to purchase open space and development rights, including our recent purchase of the riverfront area of 45 Meadow. We have some projects that are in motion we've made progress on. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll just mention the Community Senior Center has gone further than it ever has before, and the Foundry Project is very close to moving into the next phase, and our intermediate school is under the first bipartisan building committee.
Claudia, thank you very much. Now, Henry, I'll start with you this time with question number 3. What do you think about the business climate in Rocky Hill? How will you attract and retain businesses in town?
Thank you. And by the way, this is very difficult working on this timer. You get to the end, you get really nervous up here. I own a small business, and I understand the challenges businesses face. I'm also vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I assist with businesses in town trying to go through the process for permits. For small business, it's tragic. Connecticut's failed policies are being echoed by Rocky Hill's very own. Small business is leaving and relocating in other towns, as did recently Forest Machine, building a multi-million-dollar facility in Berlin. Even Claudia left Rocky Hill to relocate her practice to Hartford. It's no secret, business must be profitable to stay in its location. For a business to be successful, they must control their 3 highest costs: labor, insurance, and taxes. With almost a 10% budget increase in 2 years, it is difficult for businesses to survive. Residents have to prefer to shop locally as opposed to online like Amazon. I want to offer a discount card where a resident can spend $80 and receive $100 in goods and services as an incentive to shop locally. I want to start a collaborative effort with surrounding towns with small service-oriented businesses working together to operate as larger ones as I have. In my field, if somebody needs some emergency construction work, some paving, a water main broke, I have a group of 5 other contractors in surrounding towns, and we work together. And that way there's always an owner on every job. And it works very well for small companies, having us increase productivity and operate as a much larger company. Traffic flow on Route 3 and Silas Dean Highway must be improved to make access to businesses easier. We need to promote Rocky Hill's central location and the easy access to major highways. We should continue with revitalization of storefronts and signage. We need to place the right type of growth at the right location at the right time, not another hotel on the already congested Route 3 France Street intersection. We should be careful about new business on our last few parcels of vacant land so as they don't create an empty building such as the Hampton Inn on Route 3, which will vacate a Hampton Inn already existing on Water Chase Drive. And that same Hampton Inn also received a 5-year tax break by this administration, which I voted against. We need to stabilize taxes for business, which are at an all-time record high. The last 2 budgets, which I voted against, have tripled down on failure. No business wants to be seated on a sinking ship. Maybe a submarine, though.
Thank you, Henry, very much.
You go, Henry.
Claudia, I will go to you next. What do you think about the business climate in Rocky Hill? How will you attract and retain businesses in town?
You know, actually, it's easy to use sound bites to get people excited, but you're going to hear me say this a few times tonight. I urge you all to please fact check, because actually, we're very fortunate to have a vibrant economic climate in Rocky Hill. We gained recognition in the Hartford Business Journal as Central Connecticut's top-performing municipal economy. We've proactively engaged in outreach to attract economic development. Quite frankly, I continue to do what we're doing because it's working. In addition, I mentioned the modified zoning regulations. That was important, again, to create consistent growth, consistent with our plan of conservation and development, which is extremely important to the vision of Rocky Hill, promoting mixed use. We also have created options now for high-tech jobs to come to town, another area that is important for Rocky Hill. We support our small businesses as the backbone of our community, and you can see them opening up every day. There's more ribbon cuttings going on. You can see all the vibrancy in town, and they've all gotten, including some members of this audience, have gotten some benefit of funding for that. We hired the Connecticut Economic Research Center to inventory the town economic and development assets and to help us develop an action plan to promote those assets for growth over the long term in a smart way, consistent with what we envision for the town of Rocky Hill. Not gas infusion plants, not fracking waste, mixed use and vibrant development consistent with our town. This has been a top priority for my team and I the first 2 years, and it will continue to be a top priority because it's important to the town. It's why we have gained recognition throughout the state and have been sort of the dark horse that exceeded some of the expected winners of the accolades from the Hartford Business Journal.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, lastly to you, what do you think about the business climate in Rocky Hill? How will you attract and retain businesses in town?
Thank you. So we've all witnessed a lot of growth over the past few years, and every current administration in every town will take credit for such growth. But let's be clear about one thing. The growth we're witnessing today here in Rocky Hill is the hard work of many people over the span of many years and many administrations. Rocky Hill is an attractive venue for a lot of reasons for business. It has a good layout, we're close to I-91, but retention of business, especially our locally grown small business, continues to get overlooked. It's hard not to notice the development on Route 3 over the past few years, but what about the Silestine Highway? Why are so many of those storefronts empty? And why don't we share that same vibrance that we see just a few blocks down the road in Wethersfield? Economic development needs to be well thought out in order to balance the competing stress that we have on our infrastructure. New businesses mean more people in town, and that's great, but it also means more use of our roads. It means more use of our services like our police, our ambulance, and our fires, and honestly, it means more use of our schools. Economic development also means streamlining aspects of doing business in town so that the cost of doing business here is predictable and it's fair, and that's what new businesses want when they're looking where to go. The word is out that Rocky Hill is a growing community, so now is the perfect time to start reining in some of these large tax abatements that we've been giving. The council has been missing out on a lot of opportunities to generate new streams of income and alternative revenue sources from some of our big, larger businesses. Like any small town, we rely on property taxes to pay our bills, and allowing some big businesses to come in and to continuously defer their taxes for several years without having to compensate us for the stress on the infrastructure is a huge disservice to taxpayers. Team Rocky Hill is committed to developing plans for alternative sources of revenue because economic development should benefit taxpayers and not burden them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, very much. So those were the first 3 questions right there. And a round of applause to all of you because you guys were fantastic. And what we did there was Claudia, Lisa, Henry each had a question first. So I'm going to go back to Claudia right now for question number 4, and then we'll work our way through the last 3. So Claudia, with the uncertainty of the state budget that may include large cuts in state aid, including the elimination of the car tax, how would you propose making up the revenue lost from these cuts?
So First, there are a lot of details that are uncertain, Mark, and quite frankly, from when this question was submitted until today, apparently the car tax has hit some snags, and it doesn't look like it's going to be in the current gyration of the budget. But so I don't know that that's a reality. However, the car tax is a double-edged sword, the issue of getting rid of it or not. The concern would be if it were to be eliminated, and it looks like it's not going to be, to ensure that there's no undue burden placed upon our local taxpayers. This is a difficult budget year for all municipalities across the state and across party lines. So to try to take the issues happening in Hartford and use it as a sound bite to say that that somehow has an impact in Rocky Hill's behavior is unfair. It does have an impact on Rocky Hill, and it's for that reason that we have continued to prepare for contingencies with our budgeting. First of all, there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that the community doesn't see. A lot of work that gets put in by myself and my team. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, you're not doing anything, but you don't know that behind the scenes there are countless hours of hounding our delegation. I think Representative Guerrero, who I saw in the audience, is probably tired of hearing from me. Proactively reaching out, spending countless hours at meetings with CCM, with state and local leaders, planning, advocating, engaging, building cushions into our budget. Again, the first year, we had funds we didn't expect to get. We weren't sure if we were going to get them. We got them. And despite the urging of Mr. Vassal and his team that we spend that money, we resisted that and held it aside to keep as a cushion. And that has served us well. This year, we have also built a budget. There's no wait and see. We've held aside a cushion. We worked cooperatively with the Board of Education, who provided a surplus back to us as well, to make sure that to the extent we could look into a crystal ball, to the extent that we could gain information from all the meetings that we've attended to try to figure out how to address the shortfall, Rocky Hill's doing okay. Again, we've kept our high rating. AA+ is something to be very proud of. We're not on the warning watch list. We don't have a cash flow issue. We've gotten our tax bills out. We've kept our mill rate below the magic number of 32. Look at all your neighboring towns. We are not in that fiscal crisis. So blaming it on Hartford is a cheap shot and an easy way out. I'd also just note that the tax abatement was voted on by members of Mr. Vassal's team.
Claudia, thank you very much. Lisa, with the uncertainty of the state budget that may include large tax cuts and maybe not car tax issues, how would you propose making up the revenue loss from any cuts?
Thank you. Well, revenue from motor vehicle tax constituted 8% of our income in 2016. And the newest state budget, the bill seems to be calling for an increase in this tax. Clearly, it is inevitable that we will experience some sort of loss of revenue in one form or another. And so this is a time for teamwork. You know, the mayor's gavel is not a magic wand, and no one person can do the job that we are faced with doing now. We must have the right people in place who are committed to working together collaboratively to protect the taxpayers. For years, our elected officials have shown an inability to work together, and they have failed to compromise on key issues. Paralyzed by their own party affiliation, they have missed opportunities at every level. Well, leadership comes from within. A true leader doesn't run away from a challenge, she embraces it. A true leader doesn't shy away from controversial issues like the need for a new intermediate school. She educates the community so that they can make their own informed decisions. And a true leader stands up in times of uncertainty to advocate for the community and to offer the community solutions, as opposed to watching silently from the sidelines. Team Rocky Hill is ready to take on the challenge of lost revenue and any other challenge that comes before the taxpayers of this town, because we know that between our CPAs and project managers and the many other talented individuals that we have on our slate, that we will find the right solutions for the entire community. We also know that the success of this happening is incumbent upon the hiring of a town manager to guide us through to make these prudent decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. the uncertainty of the budget issues right now and the state aid situation, how would you propose making up any revenue loss from cuts?
I'm not pleased with the governor only negotiating with the major cities when the cuts affect all of us. We must appeal to the state. I will even drive our representatives up there personally to a meeting with the governor.
Go, Henry.
Trying to cut millions of dollars out of a budget is unreasonable, but to make these cuts all at once and almost exclusively from education is irresponsible. Connecticut's declining economy is part of the reason for the budget squeeze. I will not support a vote, let me repeat that, I will not support a vote to issue bonds to bridge any shortfalls in state funding. You can't solve fiscal problems by taking on more debt. I will not pass along a property tax increase, which mirrors a reduction in state aid. Ladies and gentlemen, municipalities are like ocean liners. They won't turn on a dime. But what we need to do now. We need to freeze the budget. We can always approve purchases later if there's a favorable outcome from the state. We need to continue cross-training staff and centralizing services like copiers like I've done. I've cross-trained staff from the town clerk's office, tax assessor, and tax collector. So during busy times, they could rotate to different offices. Each office when I was mayor had their own copier and their own cell phones. I put centralized copiers in there, cut down the number of copiers, and now they have to walk 20 to 30 feet to make a copy. I am going to work off a zero-based budget. Every time there's extra money in a budget, they're always spent. I'm going to regionalize collections such as rubbish and provide purchasing power with multiple towns. Poor budgeting has led to the interest rate we borrow money at to go up 5 times. Looking at an email from John Mayer, 2016. May 15, 2014, we borrowed money at 0.15%, and in 2016 at 0.79%. Standard & Poor's has recently threatened to lower our bond rating for poor budgetary performance. May 22nd, 2017, for Rocky Hill. If budgetary performance were to weaken or if management were to continue to draw down the fund balance, resulting in weakened flexibility, we could lower the rating. We need to bring in more projects like Solar City, which I brought into you as mayor. Explore the MDC water bills and sharp increases to alleviate additional burden to taxpayers. And continue the investigation.
Thank you, Henry.
You go, Henry. There you go, Henry.
Lisa, we will start with you with question number 5. Rocky Hill has had new development on the west side of town, while on the east side of town, some projects remain unfinished. What would you like to see happen with the Ames property as well as the riverfront, and how will you accomplish these goals?
Thank you. Well, you know, Rocky Hill is a small town, as I said. We're just 14 miles, and 14 square miles, when you think about it, is not very big at all. So, you know, I'm not really comfortable making a blanket east versus west comparison, because we know that some people and some residents are sensitive to what they perceive as a disparity in how the town responds to the needs at its different ends. You know, we are one community, and I want to be clear that under my administration, we are not going to pit demographics against each other like the way our current administration continuously pits students against seniors to excuse their inaction. The needs of taxpayers in this community are simply community needs, period. In terms of any lag in projects on the east side, there is one project happening now that's moving forward, and that's the intermediate school. And fortunately, it looks like this is moving right along as planned and will be on time. But unfortunately, we also have Ames and the Foundry, and those do appear to be neglected properties. And so the question really is, how did this happen? How did the council allow us to go years and years and years with this continuous situation? Well, you know, Ames used to be valued at over $6 million, and it, I think, recently went up on the auction block and wasn't even worth $1 million, didn't get any bites, and so now the question is, what's next? Well, you know, Ames is run by a professional management company, and Ames is paying taxes, and Ames isn't a blighted project. It's not a blighted property. It might be an eyesore, But right now, if the town were to go and purchase Ames, that would actually shift the burden of taxes onto homeowners. And do you really think our politicians can do a better job with that property? Because remember, spot development is only good if it follows the community's vision for its future. And as for the foundry, unfortunately, it's been 6 years since the groundbreaking, and we need the right people in office who are going to push that project forward, who are going to say, we need a proactive approach because the exorbitant delay
Thank you, Lisa.
is unacceptable.
Thank you. Henry, I will go to you with the same question. Rocky Hill has had new development on the west side of town, while on the east side, some projects remain unfinished. What would you like to see happen with the Ames property plus the riverfront, and how will you accomplish these goals?
We need to immediately open communication with the Ames and Foundry property owners and resolve outstanding issues and any remaining lawsuits. In regards to the Foundry, the town needs to be more active in communication with the state and railroad authority, which is holding up the project right now. It's the inability of the state and the federal government to work together, much like the politicians. This is important because we need to further the town center concept plan as addressed in the Plan of Conservation and Development. You know, there are very few communities with this type of prime real estate that can be developed with these kinds of riverfront views. There's no excuse for this to be sitting. I will establish a stakeholder group of business owners, community representatives, and elected officials to participate in a discussion and develop common goals to benefit the town on both properties. I will encourage them to explore a vision to create a distinctive destination which embodies a flavor and characteristic not found in other towns. The plan should incorporate natural, historic, and economic amenities which include shopping, government services, dining, and entertainment. There's also a potential on the Ames property for an indoor field for soccer or lacrosse or some sporting events in the wintertime. We could then establish a pedestrian boulevard to the river honoring our veterans and first responders who protect us all on a daily basis. A conceptual planning study could begin immediately with input from land use boards, riverfront preservation members, and elected officials. Funding will be sought from the federal government, DEEP, and riverfront preservation commissions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Lastly, Claudia, Rocky Hill has had new development on the west side of town, while on the east side of town, some projects remain unfinished. What would you like to see happen with the Ames property as well as the riverfront, and how will you accomplish these goals?
So here again is another example of why it's important to have a team that has both experience and fresh ideas and knowledge of what's going on in the town, because we actually have an approved plan for the Foundry, and it is moving forward. During my first year of my term, I reestablished the Tulisano Park Committee. Some members are in the audience this evening. We put that team together again for purposes of moving that project forward to the extent that we could, oversight of the project, trying to determine how the town could assist in moving it forward. We had a recent update at our town council meeting from the developer's attorney who gave us a very positive report. All town approvals have been received. The initial hurdles with the railroad have already been cleared. We already had some state approvals and we're waiting for the last one. Most recently, if you folks drove down there, you probably saw environmental trucks because they were doing their environmental study, and we anticipate getting a report any day with that. That project will include, thanks to the involvement of the neighbors as well, a park, a river walk so that we can take advantage of the fact that we are a riverfront community and we have a gem right here at the Connecticut River at our ferry area. A community room, retail, and commercial, and there are already plans for a heritage walk, which would include relevant monuments or markers that are consistent with Rocky Hill's history, including the Native American history that I was introduced to by some of our historical society and others. It ties in nicely with the new restaurant that was just recently approved at the Restaurant Depot, which is going to be in a fashion to keep it consistent with the unique character of that area of town. You can't deny that we have that historic area, and it would be a shame to say we can't call it that because somehow it's dividing it. It's not. It's unique, and it's an area to be proud of. We want to keep our community feel. We want to keep the history. As far as the Ames development, we've actually had recent interest in that property. There's a new owner in place. We're looking for a plan, but again, one that's consistent. We had somebody come forward with a plan. We rejected it. Our Planning and Zoning Commission acted responsibly because it was apartments, almost exclusively, and it's not what we want here. And we already have a Southstein Highway Revitalization Program that's continuing, and we just approved an award of a bid for Phase 2, soon to follow Phase 3, with state funding received and bids that were fiscally responsibly reviewed and came in below the number that we're getting from the state so that we're not funding it. So with all of that, I guess I'll stop there because I have a second left.
So for our last question before our closing statements, I will start with you, Henry. Question 6. Rocky Hill has had an interim town manager for the past year or so. How would you unify the town council and the residents to properly fill this position?
As I said before, we need to hire a town manager and town attorney to move the town forward. On March 24th, 2017, we wrote a letter to Claudia Mayo, Mayor. There are 3 issues that need immediate resolution. It is imperative that all 3 are included on the agenda for the April 3rd, 2017 meeting. These issues are paramount to the responsible governing of our town. The town council needs to acknowledge that Section 501 of the Rocky Hill Town Charter requires 6 affirmative votes for the appointment of a town manager. We need the appointment of a new town attorney. You indicated that you need to give some thought to this situation. The vote for the town attorney that ended in a 4-4 vote was held on October 17, 2016, over a year ago. Clearly, there has been enough time to give some thought to this issue. Inaction is a form of action. We need to formulate and implement an action plan for the selection of a town manager, which may include hiring an interim town manager to relieve the finance director's workload so that he can focus on the 2017-2018 town budget. Allowing these issues to be determined in your caucus without input from the entire council and not placing these items on the next agenda for immediate public discussion fails responsible leadership and does not serve the residents and taxpayers of Rocky Hill. Signed, Nadine Bell, Frank Zepps, Henry Vassell, Kathy Vargas, Town Council. The first step of the new town manager will be working on expanding senior tax relief, which the present administration promised and only delivered higher taxes. We need to move forward with the senior center and provide more activities for the seniors immediately. We need to be sure the council adheres to the charter and the Public Building Commission, the streetlight referendum, the 5-6 affirmative votes to appoint the town manager, which cost us many thousands of dollars in legal fees. The hiring process needs to be transparent and involve the entire council, not just a select few members. The manager should understand our charter and advise the council how to adhere to it to avoid costly legal fees. While I was mayor, I offered a transparent process, multiple sessions for questions and answers among the entire council, which led to a unanimous decision on hiring a town manager. Councilors should agree the manager's task should include investigation of corruption and backdoor deals, such as the Kennedy House, which provided free housing to a town employee. The present council majority's refusal to provide transparency to the process could only lead to a negative outcome, like a cell phone with no service. And what do you do with that? You play games.
Thank you.
Go, Henry.
Rocky Hill has had an interim town manager for the past year or so. How would you unify the town council and the residents to properly fill this position?
Well, again, there's been some sound bites and things that make sexy headlines, but again, I'll say it once again, fact check, please. I think there's some things as far as the history that need to be set straight, and so I'll start with that and hope I have enough time. So the prior town manager actually recommended Mr. Muir as the logical choice. And the town council voted unanimously to approve him as the interim town manager. Unanimously. If you've been watching the council meetings, you know that we don't unanimously agree on much. He's done a great job, and he's one of the reasons that our bond rating was maintained. You can get that report online. Please, folks, look at it, because it will tell you that one of the factors is the consistency of management, the knowledge of the town, having somebody in place during a time that was critical because of the issues going on. But we didn't stop there. In the meantime, we did follow best practices and the established practices. We appointed a search committee of our council. We followed a detailed process. We vetted applications received. They first went through an RFP process. They went through our human resources director. They went to the subcommittee, and ultimately recommendations for 2 finalists, of which Mr. Muir was one of them, came to the town council. Despite the fact that one of the candidates was quoted in one of our papers as saying he didn't have a problem with the person, he claimed a problem with the process and tried to make it sound like we shoved the candidate down people's throat and had only one opportunity to ask one question. All council members had an opportunity to submit questions, and consistent with best practices, the candidates have to be asked the same questions. That's no different than any other hiring process. So again, we have a situation of exalting form over substance for purposes of making something that should not be political. We did try to regroup. We adopted recommendations, even though they weren't necessarily things that we would have picked. We adopted them to cross party lines to try to move it forward. We interviewed search committees. We received comments back from the search committee that we were in good hands. We noted what neighboring towns had done, especially in this time of fiscal uncertainty, of spending money for a search committee or a search firm that we didn't budget for and that wasn't necessarily something we had to do given who we had in place. It's my hope that we can hit the reset button after this election, that we'll get beyond this political rhetoric, that we'll get the matter resolved, and that people actually will vote consistently with putting their money where their mouth is so that we can stop this partisan shouting match.
Claudia, thank you. Lastly, to Lisa, Rocky Hill has had an interim town manager for the past year. How would you unify the town council and the residents to properly fill this position?
Thank you. If I'm elected as your next mayor, this dysfunctional gridlock will stop. We will follow the charter, which is our town's constitution, and we will hire a good town manager, period. For those of you who don't know, the town charter is the most important legal document that exists in any town. It defines the organization, the powers, the functions, and all the essential procedures of town government. And for this reason, it is comparable to our United States and our state constitutions. Our former town manager left 1 year ago this past September, and the council did appoint an interim town manager, a gentleman who already works for the town full-time as our town's finance director. Rocky Hill's charter calls for a specific number of votes to hire a town manager, and despite that basic language, this provision was actually challenged by our current council and resulted in an embarrassing feud that only was settled after we had to hire an attorney from our town, and that came at the taxpayers' expense. We had to pay for their ongoing feud. The charter also requires that the council hire a town manager within a certain number of days. Well, it's been 360 days at least since the taxpayers have not had a designated full-time town manager holding the town accountable. And after all of the nonsense that we went through and all of the media attention that this dysfunction garnered, the council still has not made up its collective mind as to whether to start the hiring process. We're stalling over whether to hire a headhunter to fill the position that is most important in our town is the biggest disservice to taxpayers. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for change. Thank you.
So those were the 6 questions. So thank you very much. And obviously we have closing statements, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide a statement. And since we have gone through 6 questions kind of rotating, we're right back to Claudia. So I'm going to start with you, Claudia. You have 2 minutes. The floor is yours.
I'll talk fast. Thank you very much, Mark, and again, the Chamber, for everybody who came out this evening. And again, I thank you for the honor of being able to serve you these last 2 years. Again, I ask you to please look beyond the sound bites and the sexy tabloid headlines that are trying to be created and check your facts. They're available. We'll help you find where to look so you can find it yourself and you don't have to rely on what one of the candidates say, because I'm confident that you'll find the facts support your current administration, not seasoned politicians. I've been there 2 years. We were asked a lot about priorities. Many of you, again, I know you know me, and you know I believe in service and commitment. So I just want to tell you my top personal priorities, because I believe that they're consistent with what needs to be done by and through a leader for the town of Rocky Hill. Number one, my family, who I'm lucky to have members here with me this evening. Number two, my work and my service to my clients. And number three, my devotion to the town and the community in which I live. My goal is to keep Rocky Hill the great place that it is and to make it better. Please look at the progress that you've seen. You've seen our taxes kept in check to keep Rocky Hill affordable. You're hearing other things. Look at the facts. Lowest mill rate, high bond rating, no cash flow issues, not on the watch list. I could go on, but I don't have a lot of time. We've retained services. We restored the minibus for our senior population, something that the minority and prior administration wanted to get rid of. We've worked hard to promote balanced economic development and keep our open space, something that we didn't see before and one of the reasons that I ran. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and bash 30 years of administrations of the town of Rocky Hill, because quite frankly, those prior leaders on both sides of the fence were dedicated public servants, and many of them my friends. And we can't go back and second guess what they did. Again, no Monday morning quarterbacking. We don't pedal backwards. We need to move forward. I would submit that we have moved forward. I would hope you agree. 2 years goes by very fast, and I'm hoping that you'll honor us with a vote for 2 more.
Thank you, Claudia. Lisa, your turn.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone again for coming out tonight and thank the Chamber for this opportunity. I just want to point out a couple of things before we leave. You know, basically everything Mr. Vassal complained about tonight or wants to change happened under his leadership. Whether he was serving as the majority leader or the minority leader is irrelevant. What Mr. Vassal has proven to us is that he cannot unite the council to move agendas forward. So is this really the voice that we want for all of Rocky Hill? And we only seem to hear from Mayor Bayo, her voice, after those of us who have worked hard in the trenches, organizing grassroots efforts, after we have succeeded in earning the community's approval on key issues. Indeed, throughout this whole fiasco with the state, her silence to us was deafening. The mayor most recently sent out a letter touting, among other things, her formation of a bipartisan school building committee, as if somehow we should all care about party affiliation of those who are tracking the progress of that project. This is political nonsense. Do you really care about the party affiliation of these people? Well, Mayor Bayo does. And that's precisely the problem we've witnessed with this council. They are comfortable with that line that's been drawn in the sand, that division between everyone, and they have proven to it time and time again by their failure to compromise in the interest of the taxpayers. And it's time for change. Mr. Vassal is also advertising that he will address school overcrowding. Well, that ship has sailed, because we are responding to school overcrowding, and that exists at the elementary school level alone. And we're building an intermediate school to address that issue. And thanks to the efforts of Stay Invested, the Political Action Committee, which I chaired, we have brought this issue to fruition. Throughout that initiative, I forced transparency
Lisa,
and
thank you
action
very much.
onto our council.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Last one, Henry, you have 2 minutes.
All right, I'm going to go fast. As far as school overcrowding, the issue's not done. There's still more apartments, more condos. We had a plan for the Ames property for condos. So the issue is not done. But I can't sit back and let them say that I did something wrong by arguing for the values of the charter. I mean, you have 2 attorneys here who make their living by arguing, and they're worried about I'm standing up for the people of Rocky Hill.
You go ahead.
I'm also happy that Claudia Bayo keeps saying that her team has experience and fresh ideas. Because if you look at the Unite Rocky Hill motto, it's on all our brochures. So thank you, Claudia, for reading my brochures. Again, thank you to the Chamber, candidates Mark Zinni, and the voters. Unite Rocky Hill is excited to present the highly qualified slate of experience and fresh ideas. Michelle Collins, local business owner and former teacher. Cindy Tangney, over a decade experience in Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Frank Zepps, former Deputy Mayor and Board of Education member. Kathy Vargas, former Board of Ed member and over 30 years of sound financial experience. Larry Lindenberger, an organizer of the Save Open Space Initiative and a 26-year veteran and former assistant chief of the Rocky Hill Volunteer Fire Department. If elected to serve the people of Rocky Hill, I will continue to serve the needs of the people and not my campaign donors, because I am not accepting contributions. The needs of the town will change over time, but education, the seniors, and tax relief will always be my priorities. The town budget has skyrocketed almost 10% in the past 2 years, while I delivered a zero tax increase. Have you folks received a 10% raise at work or in Social Security benefits? You know, the present majority, they do not deserve your vote or your wallet. They want you to keep buying vanilla, and I'm telling you, there's 31 flavors out there. Please check us out. Go to our Facebook site, Unite Rocky Hill, uniterockyhill.com, and there's also Henry Talk up there. Support our troops. Thank you and good evening.
You go ahead.
And we also Unite Rocky Hill, Lisa Murata, the Republican candidate, Claudia Bale, Democrat. Thank you very much to all three of you. They were wonderful, very respectful. You guys were wonderful too. And I would say this, that running for office is very admirable. So a big round of applause to all three of you, because it takes a lot to do what you're doing and what you want to do. And thank you very much to all of you for being here tonight. Again, you were very respectful. I appreciate it. I'm sure you have the candidate you support. And the best thing that you can do is work to educate people and support your candidate, and then make sure folks get out to vote. But I do want to say on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, thank you to all the candidates again. Thank you to all of you. And a big thank you again to Local Stage Production, a local company, and Brian Messina, and the Rocky Hill Chamber of Commerce.